Good Friday afternoon, everybody. I'm Mark Dyer, and welcome to Friday Live in the studio. Hope you all had a good holiday. Glad to have you back here with me again this Friday. I'm here to talk about my art and promote my art. And so if you're interested in anything you see or anything you hear, please contact me through Facebook, please. And how are you, Jane? And also through dyerfineart.com. You can head over there. Most of my work is on my website, and there are also email links if you have any questions or need more information. Excuse me just a minute. So a couple questions that I'm going to try to answer this week, and I'm going to kind of run them together, and then I'll just start talking. So, hi Susan. One is, when did I become an artist? And the other one is, what is art? So pretty broad questions there. So I'm going to start with when did I become an artist? I don't think that I ever had the heavens open up and the golden light shine down and that epiphany and something hit me in the head. I'm sure I was probably dropped in my head at some point during childhood, but I don't think that's why I became an artist. I've always been creative as long as I can remember. I've always been interested in drawing and making things, shapes and figures, and nailing pieces of wood together. So it's just kind of in my blood of who I am and what I do. It's really a large facet of what I would describe myself as. A lot of people have many facets, but I think mine really revolves around the idea of being creative. Not so much maybe an artist, a painter, a sculptor, but just being creative, because I do so many things during the course of my day. It's hard for me not to get distracted into something creative. Walking through the grocery store, I can kind of drift off about being creative, and so I think there are a lot of, how are you? And so I think there are a lot of artists that are kind of that same. It's just always in their DNA of who they are and what they do. Examples for me was it kind of will start making sense as you learn more about me. Mrs. Haymaker, always a school teacher, always encouraged me creatively. A wonderful woman. I'm grateful for her, but she always allowed me to do the 8 foot by 24 foot bulletin boards at the back of the room, and I would cut out pieces of paper and construction paper and make figures and scenery and all sorts of things. So I always had this big canvas at the back of the room to work with, even as a little kid. So that was one of my fondest memories. One of my greatest joys was doing those bulletin boards as a little kid. Also, I really pushed the limits. Rather than doing book reports, I would turn in illustrations of books that I had read. So I'm sure I worked a lot of teachers' nerves growing up. I would do sculptures and do busts of characters in how I interpret them in books that I've read. And so I was always, working the edge there, being creative. But just to sit down and write a report was pretty horrible for me. Probably a little ADD there going on. So being creative and working with my hands really helped me, I think. I appreciate all the teachers that tolerated that behavior and hopefully maybe enlightened a few that maybe weren't quite so tolerant of that. So that's kind of always being creative, even in my daily life as I go through. I do a lot of different things. So sometimes you'll see pictures of my living room with my television. That's my old childhood nightstand that I had next to my bed, and I was always dragging stuff in from outside and setting up these elaborate installation pieces in my bedroom. One particular time I brought in cattails, and while we were gone, the dog decided to chew the cattails, and we came home to a thick layer of cattails covering the house, and so my mom wasn't too happy about that. But I've always had that creative urge. I know, right? So, but I've always, that's how I've always done things. Even now, I go outside, I can't just set a rock down. I have to set a rock down and arrange it and turn it and twist it. And so it's just part of my natural nature to be creative and how I think. And so, God bless the person who could put up with that. So then we get into the idea of then, talking about stacking rocks. What is art? Art really is a subjective or objective thing. I know people have heard that over and over. I've heard people repeat that over. How are you? Happy Friday. So it's always, the objective part is the tree has to look like a tree, has to look like a tree, has to look like that tree. That's kind of the vein that I grew up in, was to be good art, it had to look exactly like that tree, and that portrait had to look exactly like that person. And I was never exposed really to traditional classical arts, fine art, so I kind of going back to the idea of how did I become an artist, I really don't know, but it's just, again, it's always been in my DNA. So to me, it was not about being objective in my art, but being subjective. Thank you, I appreciate that. So being subjective in my art. So to me, a tree has to feel like a tree, has to feel like it during its life cycle, while it's coming out as the ground as a seedling, while it's popping out new leaves in the spring, budding out, and when it's losing its leaves, and the dying cycle, and the decomposition of the tree. So that tree has all of these emotions that it evokes during its lifetime, like we do. And so that's really, for me, the subjective aspect of what I do. I subjectively look at life around me. I sometimes, and I know there are a lot of people like this, that we feel like aliens. I say I'm transhuman, and I don't mean that in a demeaning way to anybody. I truly feel I'm transhuman at times, from another planet that I didn't quite make. I'm here in the wrong body, and because I feel so differently, I think at times and think so differently throughout my life, which is why I lock myself in the studio, simply because I get overstimulated going out. So I think, thank you. So I think the idea of being transhuman is part of a lot of artists. We stand outside the normal realms of society, and we're looking in, and so we're kind of that consciousness of our society, that we kind of see things a little bit differently, or a lot differently than most people do. We might see more of the reality of the situation. So it kind of then goes into the idea of, someone had said to me this week that artists shouldn't be so political, that they need to just stick to creating pretty pieces of work, and to me that's not what art is. Art is not what matches yourself or looks good in your house. Art is those things that evoke emotions and grab your attention and make you maybe think differently. The piece behind me, I'll step aside, this is 100% political piece I did a couple years ago. Lots of iconography, lots of my own symbolism in them. I won't go into the piece. If you're interested, I'll explain later. But it is strictly a political piece. And I know a lot of artists through the ages have done political pieces speaking out about the atrocities of what's going on around them, the idea of humanity and the human evolution. So being an artist, you have to evoke all of these things, I think, when you're working. Even, I believe, in objective art, even if a tree looks like a tree, it better look like a tree that moves to be good art. And not that there's not many forms of art, but so it's all open to interpretation, which then kind of brings me to my next idea in this vein that we've been talking about, is a lot of people have said to me, well, I don't know anything about art, especially with me being an abstract artist. I don't know anything about art. I don't understand it, and so I stay away from it. And so what I'm encouraging people to do is, rather than stay away from it, to approach a piece of work, look at it. If you feel something from it, understand why you're feeling that. Continue to look at it. Look around the canvas. If you don't like it, that's perfectly fine. Perhaps maybe that's what the artist was trying to do, is get you to move away from that piece, or to feel that raw emotion. But don't dismiss it just because of the way you feel. So, excuse me, one of the things that I like to relate on this issue is that I know a family, absolutely, Greg. So I know a family who all the children in the family absolutely hate carrots. They make no bones about the way they feel about carrots. They feel about carrots the way I feel about art. They're obsessed with it. They're possessed with it. But isolate them one at a time, and they will all give you the same pat answer as to why they don't like carrots, and I won't go into all their reasoning, but it's almost verbatim what they say to you about why they don't like carrots, and then it's only when you speak to the matriarch of the family, the mother of the family, that she feels exactly the same way, that she says exactly those same words. So I think a lot of times when we approach work, artwork, and think that we don't understand it, it's because maybe perhaps that's what we've heard our families say, is that that's, so I'm encouraging you to let go of that feeling maybe for a moment, especially with my work. I want my work to be approachable. There's never a right way or a wrong way to think about my work. It is what it is, and I hate that saying, but it is what it is to the viewer at the time. And while I have my hang on just a second. While I have my own personal interpretations of things and my own ideas, how the viewer also feels about it is up to them. So there's a certain point where I let go of a painting or an emotion or an idea and just allow the viewer to then take it and make it their own. And it's the same with everybody's work. I think it's all the individual idea that, so then that kind of brings us back to the idea of subjective work. Subjective is the interpretation of the individual, and so that makes it really subjective. Artwork is not good simply because it's expensive. Artwork has to have many qualities. It has to first draw you in or push you away. It has to move you emotionally. It has to work and communicate to you. So in my work, what you see, and a lot of people don't understand it, is that while they might look really busy, there's a path that you take to go through my paintings, and I always want you to stay on that canvas. And the other big thing for me is that I want you to forget that you're looking at a canvas, and I want you to feel, I want you to be taken in by my work and really feel the essence of what it is that I'm trying to say. But the big thing is forgetting that you're looking at work and feel that emotion. So having you being drawn in and taken in, that's my objective, and that's less objective than it is subjective. So stop for a moment in front of a painting if you think that you don't understand art, and just take it in. You don't have to draw any conclusions. You can always go back. No one's gonna ban you from the museums or from the gallery just because you don't feel the same thing an artist does, or you may not understand it the same way. The other part is, the more you allow yourself to just look at a painting, the more you yourself will evolve into those things and have a different appreciation for it. So I've rambled on here now for a while, so with that being said, I want to thank everybody for your patronage throughout the year. It means a lot to me. I greatly appreciate your support, your encouragement, your camaraderie, all of those things that social media has been able to provide. You are kind of my connection to the world that I live vicariously through sometimes, because I'm stuck here in the studio, and not really stuck, but I keep myself locked away. So, excuse me, Happy New Year, be safe, and I look forward to what the new year brings to all of us. Be careful, everybody. Happy New Year.